And what are the rhymes that we learn during our childhood? We learn Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which teaches us nothing about stars. We learn about Baba Black Sheep, which teaches us nothing about sheep. And of course, that particular rhyme has got a lot of other problems associated with it. I went to my father, who is a third generation doctor, and I told him that I wanted music to be my profession. My father was absolutely furious. Winning a Grammy is always an exhilarating moment. We've got a song even teaching children about what a carbon footprint is, and it goes like, that I will leave a mark on this planet, but it will not be a carbon footprint.
Namaste. Welcome to Between the Notes with Soumya Vajpayee. On a day when we celebrate the freedom of our nation, we have somebody with us whose sound, whose music has carried the flavor of this nation to the entire world. A 3-time Grammy Award winner, a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador. His sound is rooted in India, but it speaks a language that the entire world understands, of peace, of unity, of nature. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome an exemplary musician who I have the honor of calling a very dear friend, Ricky Cage.
Hey Soumya, great to be interviewed by you again. Of course, it's been a long gap, and you're one of the very, very few true music journalists in India. So always great to get questions from you and to get a lot of insights from you. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us on BTN. And I don't think there could be a better occasion for us to get chatting. It's Independence Day, and who better than you to talk all things India? So, Ricky, you were a dentist who happened to become a musician. I would love to know, what was your first love? If dentistry was your true calling, then how did music happen, and vice versa?
There was never any doubt in my mind. Ever since I remember, I've always been two things. I've been a musician and an environmentalist. And it's in our 12th grade that all of us have to make a decision as to what we want to do for the rest of our lives. And I had made a very strong decision that I wanted music to be my profession, my bread and butter, my everything. And I went to my father, who is a third generation doctor, and I told him that I wanted music to be my profession and I wanted to do music till the day I die. And my father was absolutely furious because he always thought of music as being a hobby, and he always felt, or rather he'd not articulated it in his head, that I wanted music to be actually a profession. So then after a lot of drama at home and a lot of heartache and a lot of pushing and pulling, arguments, all of that stuff, my father and I reached a compromise that I would finish off a degree in dental surgery. And once I got that degree, then my life was my own, and he would never question me again for the rest of my life. So I went to 5 years of dental college, and at the end of 5 years, I did not know anything in dentistry, but I got a degree in dental surgery. So I very ceremoniously gave the degree certificate to my father, and after that, I became a full-time musician. But my musical career had already started during my dental school itself. I used to work very hard. I used to go to college from 9 to 5, and from about 6 o'clock to about 2 o'clock in the morning, I would be in some studio recording. I was doing commercials for television and radio. So my musical career had already started. I was already doing well financially within the music profession during my dentistry. So coming back to your question, dentistry was never my profession at all. I did not practice even for a single day as a dentist. Even through my dental education, I was doing music professionally, and once I got my degree, I got into music full time. Music has always been my profession, and there was never any doubt in my mind about that.
So, Ricky, you won your first Grammy for Winds of Samsara, and your third Grammy was for Divine Tides. I would love to know, what was that moment like when you sat there in the audience and heard your name for the first time as a Grammy Award winner, which is the world's biggest recognition for a musician. What was it like?
So winning a Grammy is always an exhilarating moment, simply because it's huge validation for your work, and it's the biggest music award in the world. There is no doubt about that. So it always feels great. I've won it 3 times. I've been extremely fortunate about that. I remember the first time when I won the Grammy Award in 2015, when my name was called out and I got up to go on stage to collect the award. The only thing that came to my mind was that, now nobody can stop me from making music. So, and now I can finally realize my dream of making music till I die. Because, what constitutes a successful musician? I mean, everybody's definition of success is different. Some people's definition of success is making a huge amount of money. Some people, it's about playing to large audiences. Some people, it's about fame and power. For me, it's all about, being able to continue to make music. So even if I'm not making too much of money, or even if I'm just about comfortable, as long as I'm able to continue making music and putting that music out there, whether people listen to it or not, if I am able to continue to make music and if I have the means to do that, I would consider myself to be successful. And it's the same thing with the second and third Grammy. It just motivated me even more to continue doing what I'm doing. I make niche music. I make music on topics that I feel strongly about. I do not make mass music. I do not make music which will get me millions and millions of followers. But it's important to be satisfied with what you have as long as you are loving the art that you are creating. Because many times, we are able to become musicians in our career, but we are constantly making music that we ourselves do not listen to, or we ourselves do not appreciate making. So I believe that I'm blessed that I'm able to make the music that I would love making. I'm blessed that I am a musician, and the Grammys help me perpetuate that blessing. So I'm grateful for it.
So, Ricky, as somebody who works towards so many causes and wants to bring about a change in the world through your music, I would love to know, what is music for you? Is it an activism? Is it advocacy? Is it a mission? I mean, how would you define your role in that entire space?
For me, music is more a form of advocacy rather than activism. While I believe that activism is extremely important, that's not the path that I've taken. For me, the path that I've taken is more about advocacy. Because Baba Diom, the famous Senegalese philosopher, he had once said that at the end of the day, we as human beings, we'll only protect things that we love. Because that's within our nature. We'll only protect things that we love. We will only love things that we understand. And we will only understand things that we are taught. So I've made it my mission in my life to make everyone fall in love with the natural world. And hopefully through that love, we will find it within ourselves to protect, to conserve, and to sustain. And also, to bring about change in this world, there are two ways to go about it. What I call the Greta Thunberg approach, which is more about activism, which is about shaming people into action and showcasing doom and gloom and a post-apocalyptic scenario so that people are moved towards bringing about change. Now, I believe that this is extremely important, but it probably brings about a short-term change. And sometimes you're turning off people more than you're actually drawing people in. And the second style of, is what I would call advocacy, is the David Attenborough approach, the Sir David Attenborough approach, one of the greatest naturalists and greatest, I would say, filmmakers ever on our planet, one of the greatest advocates when it comes to nature. So he would show the beauty of the world and make everyone fall in love with the beauty of the world. And hopefully through that love that we have for the beauty of the world, or what beautifully remains in our planet, we would find it within ourselves to protect, to conserve, and to sustain. So that's the path that I have taken. Now, when it comes to music itself, nowadays, I very rarely take music that is commissioned to me. It is always music that I create from the heart and on topics that I feel dearly about, and topics and philosophies that I want to communicate to my audiences. So sometimes I get an idea. It could be me just sitting down in the forest and I get an idea, or me seeing something within my life, or reading something in the newspaper, or having a conversation with somebody like a scientist or a world leader, and getting inspired by those words and creating a piece of music. So it always starts off with an emotion, and then it's all about that struggle of converting that emotion into the emotional language of music. So much so that the end listener feels the exact same emotion. Now, this can happen through lyrics and words, which is far more direct, or it could happen through emotional music, which is obviously open to a lot more interpretation. But yet, that becomes when it is instrumental music, it becomes all about conveying the emotion rather than the exact literature or the exact thought that I want to communicate.
So, Ricky, you have performed for world leaders and you've also performed for school children. I would love to know, which audience scares you the most?
So yes, I have performed for all sorts of audiences all over the world, whether they're world leaders or children or large festivals, because I've always believed that, and in fact, Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation, said that in order to bring about true change and in order to bring about a truly large-scale movement, one has to have a top-down approach, which is through government and policy and through leaders, and also a ground-up approach through through the general public, and through behavioral change. And so that's why my music also, when I perform at concerts, I perform to some concerts of mine are to intimate gatherings of world leaders and to leaders of Fortune 500 companies and to gatherings at the United Nations, where each of the persons within that audience has got massive power to affect change, to affect positive change in a large scale. I also do music festivals, large scale concerts at universities and things like that. Audiences of about 20,000, 30,000, sometimes even 80,000 people. So I do these large scale concerts where the messaging is completely different. It's about what can we do within our own individual capacity. Because nowadays everybody talks about changing the world, but we so rarely talk about changing ourselves. And that's not because we're bad people or we're evil people. It's simply because we haven't empowered ourselves to believe that the small, tiny, incremental changes that we can make within our own lives actually matter. We always feel that, if I stop using single-use plastics, what difference will it make? Or, if I stop or if I reduce my consumption of fossil fuels, what difference will it make? Or if I'm compassionate to everybody around me, what difference will it make? I'm just one person. But it does make a huge difference. And what matters is that if we, as again Gandhi said, if we be the change that we want to see in this world, and that is the most important thing. We have to lead by example. So my concerts, it's got both these experiences, and and I tailor make my music for my audiences. So when it's large scale audiences, everybody have a lot of fun. They dance with us, they sing along with us. We've not had a single concert where people were not dancing and enjoying themselves by the end of it. But after all of that entertainment, when my audiences go home, they have something very important to think about, which stays with them and hopefully moves them.
So, Ricky, you've also composed a few songs for children. If there is some song that you have to make, which is played in every school, which is taught to children growing up, what would that be and why?
So I have made music for children along with my very close friends Dominic De Cruz and Lonnie Park. I created this project known as My Earth Songs, which is basically 30 songs based on sustainability. So we've got a song about a rhinoceros, we've got a song about an elephant, we've got a song teaching children about plastics pollution, we've got a song even teaching children about what a carbon footprint is, and it goes like, that I will leave a mark on this planet, but it will not be a carbon footprint. So all these songs are super positive. They're not about doom and gloom. So they're super positive, energetic, filled with hope, filled with energy, and the kind of songs that you listen to it once, it's just going to stick in your head. So because at the end of the day, the songs that you learn during your childhood are the songs that you remember forever. And if there are any morals in those songs, those morals stick with you forever. And what are the rhymes that we learn during our childhood? We learn Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which teaches us nothing about stars. We learn about Baba Black Sheep, which teaches us nothing about sheep. And of course, that particular rhyme has got a lot of other problems associated with it. But nevertheless, that's why, we made My Earth Songs because if you want to create a more environmentally conscious society, the best way is to start with the children. And I believe that children are born with empathy, with kindness, with compassion, with environmental consciousness. Children have got an innate love for nature. They do not want to destroy anything. They're not born with any racism. But what we are doing through the education system and as parents, what we're doing is that we're systematically erasing all of those beautiful qualities from our children. So I believe that the education system will be successful if those qualities remain in our children from birth till the time they grow older. So that's what these songs attempt to do, to enable children to keep the qualities that they're born with within themselves and to build a better future for our planet.
So, speaking of your versatility, Ricky, you have performed with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and you've also performed with the folk artists in villages. How do you go about that entire process?
I've been very fortunate to work with so many orchestras all over the world, and I love working with orchestras because working with an orchestra, it sort of reminds me of India as a country. Now, you may say that an orchestra is a Western form of music, so how is it reminding me of India? But I'll explain to you why, because an orchestra has got a lot of instruments. Like, for example, you've got a violin, which is a soft instrument. You've got a timpani, which is a loud percussion instrument. You've got a harp, which is a soft angelic instrument, and then you've got tuba, which is a loud wind instrument. And you've got all of these instruments. Each of these instruments has got its own unique personality. A violin is not trying to be a timpani. A timpani is not trying to be a tuba. A tuba is not trying to be a harp. All of them have got their own unique sound, identity, philosophy. But at the same time, when all of them play together, they play together beautifully, harmoniously as one. And it's the same with India. India is the land of diversity, in fact, unity and diversity. You drive 200 kilometers in any direction in India, you're going to find a completely new language, new culinary taste, maybe a new religion, people who look completely different, people with different ideologies, philosophies, people with different political ideologies and stances. So, but somehow the whole country works beautifully together as one, as as a nation. And India has, since time immemorial, India has had this beautiful philosophy of oneness. It's been very strong in Hinduism, in Buddhism, even in Islam, in Christianity, in Buddhism, in Jainism, all of these different religions. And we've, over the years, we've sort of mistaken what oneness means. We feel that oneness is all about uniformity, but that's not true at all. Oneness in ancient cultures has always meant maintaining your own diversity, but working together as one in beautiful harmony. And that's why I love working with orchestras. And at the same time, I love working with tribal musicians. In fact, I've worked and documented with tribal musicians across the length and breadth of India, in pretty much every region in India. So, because, they are all about improvisation, that they improvise their music, and also they've got music and songs that have been passed down from generation to generation. So a large orchestra, since everybody have to play together beautifully, harmoniously as one, it needs to be planned really well. Everybody needs to be given their scores, and the planning has to be absolutely meticulous, and it's not open to improvisation, while performing. Whereas when it comes to working with tribal and folk musicians, it's all about improvising. It's all about ancient music. Some of the songs that I've recorded with these tribal musicians are said to be over 3,000 years old. And these songs are passed down from generation to generation orally. So it's not been documented, these songs. So they're just passed down traditionally and orally from generation to generation. So a lot of these songs have been lost, over the last few thousand years. So there are songs that existed on this planet which we will never hear again. Maybe these songs had a lot of messages of hope, maybe messages on coexistence with the environment, about how to live peacefully with nature, how to live in collaboration with nature, and we've just lost these songs. So I've made it my mission that we cannot lose any more of these songs. And I've been documenting these songs and filming these amazing tribal musicians across India, so that we have a treasure trove of knowledge, of music, of melodies that we can pass on to the next generation and the future generations.
So, Ricky, a very unique characteristic about your music is that it's very cinematic but very emotional. If somebody has a laptop and a DAW and no budget, how do they make music like Ricky Cage? What do they do to crack that formula?
So I believe that the DAW, the laptop, even the musical instruments for that matter, are just tools for us to create an emotive experience. So I would say that, in India, we've got a problem where every piece of music is actually commissioned, or rather most pieces of music are actually commissioned pieces of music. So much so that because Bollywood has had such a huge grip on the musical soundscape and landscape in India, or rather the film industries of different regions have had such a strong grip on the musical landscape in India. So much so that almost every song that is made in India is either a love song or a party or item song or whatever you call it. So it's only two kinds of songs that are predominantly available in India. So I think that musicians, we need to dig deep within ourselves, figure out what is it that makes us uniquely Indian, what are the problems that face us, what are the things that we need to celebrate, and create music based on that. Create music that is truly a piece of us, and music that truly defines us. And then after that, we use the tools that are at our disposal. Like it could be a DAW, it could be a musical instrument, it could be a virtual instrument, it could be headphones, it could be a microphone, or whatever. But I believe that it should always start with the emotion. It should start with what is it that we want to communicate with our audiences. And if you start with the emotion, I believe that the song will connect with people. It may not connect with a super large audience because you may not have the marketing budgets, or you may not be making music that is currently trending, or the algorithm may not favor you, but you will at least connect with a few people. And I think that is far more important than shooting in the dark and creating music that does not define you at all. There are so many musical composers in India who are making item songs, and who absolutely believe in gender equality, who believe in all the good things in life, and who constantly advocate for it and talk about it, but then they end up making misogynistic item songs for movies. Now, we can argue that they're paid to do it, that's why they're doing it, but I believe that our art defines us. And maybe not now, but at least 100 years from now, our art will define us. People will not read books about us to understand who we were as people. They will actually listen to our music, and through the lyrics and through the emotions of the music, they will define who we are as people. So I believe that we as artists need to ensure that we create art that truly defines us as people. And because our art is what actually defines us, and our art is what we are all about.
So, Ricky, this one is a BTN special, especially for our viewers. For somebody who's aspiring to make it right in the music industry and is just starting out, what are some key advices that you would give so that they know exactly what to do and what not to do?
So it is the arts industry, so there are no rules, but it's important to know some rules, especially when it comes to the art and the craft of music, in order to break them. So the first thing I would say is that everybody needs to have a music education, whether it is in Indian classical music or Western classical music or whatever discipline you want to learn. But it's important to have a formal education in music, because art, as I said, is about breaking the rules, but you have to know the rules before you break them. Now, within the music industry as such, I would say that just being a fantastic musician is not enough. Of course, first and foremost, you have to be a really, really good musician. You have to be extremely good at what you do, whether you're a musician or a DJ or a recording artist or a producer. You have to be really, really good at the art form. That is, there's no negotiation on that. But at the same time, just that is not enough. You also have to be an entrepreneur, because you're constantly selling something, and that is yourself and your art. So you have to be good at that. And the third thing is that you have to be a great leader, because making music is not an isolated phenomenon anymore. You have to work with large teams of other musicians, orchestras, band members. You also have to work with marketing people. You have to work with record labels, filmmakers, music video makers, with the media, with the press. You have to work with so many people. So you have to have good leadership abilities. It's very important. A lot of kids come to me and they tell me that, oh, my parents are very strict. They will not allow me to be a musician. Can you give me some advice? So I say that, you have to be a very, very good leader if you want to be a successful musician. And the first audience that you have to actually impress is your own parents. And if your parents are really strict and they're not allowing you to get into music, then you have to rebel against that, or you have to be able to convince them. Because if you're not able to convince your own parents that you're going to be a successful musician, then how are you going to convince millions of people about the same thing? How are you going to convince millions of people that you are a good musician in the first place? So you have to be able to convince your parents. Or if you cannot convince your parents, I'm going to say something really controversial, you have to be a leader enough to rebel against them and do what you absolutely love, and that is music. And if you cannot do this, then I would say that the music industry is a really, really tough place to be in. So probably it's not the profession for you. So probably do what your parents ask you to do if you're not able to do that.
Ricky, Between the Notes is about the silences that are between two notes, the silences that exist when you are composing something. For you, what comes between the notes?
As they say, there is always calm before the storm. Similarly, when it comes to music, the silences is what defines the notes. The notes cannot exist, or melodies cannot exist without the silences between notes and the silences between phrases. In fact, we composers and we music producers, we add silences in very strategic points to make the music feel a lot larger. A crescendo at the end of a song only works if you calm the song a little bit before that crescendo, so the crescendo feels far more stronger and more emotionally stirring. It's the same thing within our lives. We meditate to bring perspective in our lives. We sometimes, just sit down in silence to understand each other's perspective. Two people who are absolutely in love, they can be most comfortable with each other if they are able to spend long moments or long periods of time in silence with each other. So silence is extremely important, and it's the same thing in music. So for me, silence comes naturally within my music to bring in sometimes, as I mentioned, the calm before the storm, or sometimes to define different emotional points within a song. Uh, a lot can be said within the silences of a song. A lot can be conveyed within it. So I believe that I believe that silences are very important when it comes to music, probably as important as the notes within music.
So, this is a little away from music, but the business of music. You own your own masters and you release your music independently, Ricky. For somebody who's just starting out, what are the two business things that they must keep in mind so that they are absolutely safe when it comes to working on something or releasing their music?
In addition to all that I mentioned about being a musician and about being a leader and an entrepreneur and creating music from the heart, I would say that if you are creating music in a niche genre, then it's very important to figure out an artist manager who actually gels with you. Now, in my career, I've not had anybody who's represented me up until now, simply because I believe that, my music only I understand it really well. So I've got a beautiful team of people who work with me full time, who end up representing me and who end up, helping me out with the business of music. But finding a manager is always a daunting task because most managers in India have got a very one size fits all approach. They want you to fit into a mold that they've already pre-created rather than trying to build you as an artist. And I've seen that it very, very rarely happens where an artist manager actually, builds an artist based on what the artist wants to do. So I believe that if you're in a niche genre and not in a mainstream genre like Bollywood or anything like that, but you're actually in a niche genre like jazz music or indie music or even Indian classical music, because now even that is unfortunately considered to be a niche genre, then it's very important to find a manager who truly believes in your current form of music, and tries to build you without trying to change you as an artist. So if you can find a manager like that, stick with them. And but I would strongly recommend not going with a manager who even suggests that you try to change your music or try to make your music mass, because that manager has not understood you and is not managing you for who you are.
So, with 3 Grammy Awards, you could have easily made music that trends and makes it to charts and rules all kinds of streaming platforms and makes it to people's playlists overnight. Why did you choose to make music on things like water, land, soil, climate change, children? What was the real impetus?
Ever since I remember, as I mentioned earlier in this in this conversation, that I've always been two things. I've been a musician and I've been an environmentalist. Two pillars that have pretty much dictated my whole life and every single life decision that I've ever made. And of course, music. My music has always reflected the environment since the time I was a young child. I used to, instead of copying, or like most people at that young age, if they play a musical instrument, most people end up playing famous songs or Bollywood songs or songs that they've heard. My parents used to always tell me that I would always try to express myself through these musical instruments, and I would create new pieces of music. Extremely rarely I would play other pieces of music that I've heard. It would always be new pieces and brand new pieces of music that I've just created and trying to express myself or trying to communicate something through my music. So it was obvious that I would make music about the environment and things that I feel strongly about. But it's much later on in my life. When I started off my musical career, I started off doing commercials for television and radio. As I mentioned, even while I was doing my dental education, I was creating commercials. And I did that for about 13 years. And at the end of 13 years, it sort of struck me that these big brands have understood the power of music, so much so that they're ready to base their multi-billion dollar campaigns on music. They're ready to spend a few $1,000s on me to create a piece of music for them to sell something, because they're always trying to sell something. And not only that, they're ready to spend millions of dollars to actually air that music on television and radio, because that's how much it costs to actually air these television and radio commercials. So they understood the power of music, that music is a very important language for not just for communicating a message, but for retaining that message deep in the consciousness of a listener. We all have experienced the power of music in some way or the other. For example, every nation without exception, everywhere in the world has got a national anthem. And the first moment that you listen to that national anthem, even if it is like for the thousandth time, it's going to bring in a sense of emotion of, duty towards our nation and pride for our nation. And every religion has got songs. And as soon as you listen to a moment of those songs, you feel a sense of devotion to the God that you're praying to, and you feel a sense of community through that music. And that is the power of music. The power of music has been showcased to us time immemorial. So yes, so that's when I decided that music for me is not just going to be about entertainment, but it's also going to be about communicating something that I feel strongly about, which more often than not is about the environment and about positive social impact. So that's what started that new journey of mine. Instead of having some of my music about the topics that I feel strongly about, it became every single piece of music that comes off my fingers, comes out of my head, or comes off the studio is going to be about, in my own small, tiny capacity, trying, or rather humble capacity, trying to make this world a better place.
Ricky, you choose subjects like climate change and peace. So, when you're working on a song like that, what comes first? Is it the melody or is it the message?
A lot of people ask me that since my music is about nature, why don't I use sounds of nature within my music? Now, I've always likened that to, the art form of photography versus painting. Now, when it comes to photography, if I were to take a photograph of you, Soumya, then, it would be based on the current lighting conditions and based on the camera that I'm using. In that exact moment when I click the photograph, it would show up on the photographic plate, and that particular moment would become immortal through that particular photograph, based on your exact mood, and basically a verbatim image of that exact millisecond when I click that photograph of you. Whereas if I were to make a painting of you, then I would have these conversations with you. I would get to know you better. I would, and it would be open to a lot more interpretation while I'm painting you. I would get a little bit of your personality into it, a little bit of our interaction into that particular painting. So for me, when and I do spend a lot of time in nature, so I like to interpret those sounds of nature through the language of music, through a flute, through a sitar, through an orchestra, through a human voice, through a choir. And rather than taking a photograph, liking it to taking a photograph, like rather than actually recording the sounds of nature, I would rather interpret the sounds of nature through the beautiful language of music and through the beautiful discipline of Indian classical music and Western classical music.
Ricky, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such an enriching conversation, and I loved soaking in this entire, fervor of India. Not really, being jingoistic about something, but truly feeling the sense of organic music making, feeling the pride in somebody who is so deeply rooted in Indian culture and actually is a global citizen. So, thank you, and it was indeed an honor, Ricky. Thank you.